Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna
Hare Krishna Prabhu, for me your voice is very low.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisance, devotees. All
Oh,
good humans, Prabhupada. Yeah, hey, Mati, when are you ready? Can start, Mataji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Today we are reading Canto 3, Chapter 26, text 25 to 36. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naranchaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudire Nastapráyesu abhatresu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavate uttama shloke bhaktirbhavati naistiki. Text 25. The threefold ahankara, the source of the gross elements, the senses, and the mind, is identical with them because it is their cause. It is known by the name of Sankarsana, who is directly Lord Ananta with 1,000 heads. This false ego is characterized as the doer, as an instrument, and as an effect. It is further characterized as serene, active, or dull according to how it is influenced by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. From the false ego of goodness, another transformation takes place. From this evolves the minds whose thoughts and reflection give rise to desire. The mind of the living entity is known by the name of the Lord Aniruddha, the supreme ruler of the senses. He possesses a bluish-black form resembling a lotus flower growing in the aura. He is found slowly by the yogis. By the transformation of the false ego in passion, intelligence takes birth, O virtuous lady. The function of intelligence are to help in ascertaining the nature of object when they come into view and to help the senses. Doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory, and sleep, and as determined by their different functions, are said to be the distinct characteristics of intelligence. Egoism in the mode of passion produces two kinds of senses, the senses of acquiring knowledge and the senses of action. The senses of action depend on the vital energy, and the senses of acquiring knowledge depends on intelligence. When egoism in ignorance is agitated by the sex energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the subtle element sound is manifested, and from sound come the ethereal sky and the senses of hearing. Persons who are learned and who have the true knowledge define sound as that which conveys the ideas of an object, indicates the presence of a speaker screened from our view, and constitutes the subtle form of ether. The activities and characteristics of the ethereal element can be observed as the accommodation of room for the external and internal existence of all living entities, namely the field of activities of the vital air, the senses, and the mind. From ethereal existence, which evolves from sound, the next transformation takes place under the impulse of time, and thus the subtle element touch and the sense, the air, and sense of touch become prominent. That text 36. Softness and hardness and cold water and heat are the distinguishing attributes of touch, which is characterized as the subtle form of air. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Yeah, Krishna and Prabhu, whenever you're ready, you can start, Prabhuji.
yeah, sure, Prabhu. Are you able to hear, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, it's clear only, Prabhu. Yes.
Okay. Today we are reading from the slokas 25. Okay. Thank you, Hemang Mataji, for reading the translations for today's session. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 26. The title is Fundamentals, Principles of Material Nature. So from sloka 25 to 36. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurvanmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namani. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pachatta Deshatarani. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktarunda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Just to give a background, so in the previous chapter, we heard Maitreya Muni narrating how Kardama Muni, after he left the ashramam, then Mother Devahuti, she approached her son Kapila Bhagavan and she requested to impart the transcendental knowledge. So, and being pleased and compassionate, Kapila Bhagavan started explaining, starting with the glories of the devotional service that was discussed in the last chapter. So, and stressed that so it is the only way to go back home, back to God. So, in this chapter, so we are so far heard that Mother Devahuti asking Kapila Bhagavan to explain the characteristics of the Supreme Lord and his energies, because they are the cause of his creation. So the creation manifests and unmanifests. Bhutva, Bhutva, Pralayatira. So then Kapila Bhagavan talks about the 3 modes, 5 gross elements, and then 5 subtle elements. And then he also talks about Jnanendriyas, Karmendriyas in a high level. Also the time. And then now we will continue from there. So in the sloka 25, we see that this false ego, the threefold ahankara, so is the source of the gross elements, the senses, the mind. So because of it is the source, so it is identical with them. So in the last sloka, the 23, 24, we heard that, from the material ego, the false ego came from Mahatattva. And the material ego is predominantly with the active power of 3 kinds, like good, passion, and ignorance. And from these 3 types of material ego, so the mind, the senses of perfection, the organs of action, and gross elements, everything came. So that's why in the text 25, Kapila Bhagavan is saying that this threefold ahankara. So threefold means the false ego influenced by the mode of passion and mode of goodness and mode of ignorance. So because that's the source of the gross elements, senses, the mind. So here it is said the ahankara, the false ego, is identical with them, and it is known by the name Sankarshana. So who is directly Lord Ananta with the thousands of words. So, and apart from this false ego, so we have another ego called real ego. So when one identifies themselves as the pure spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna, so then that is called real ego. So Aham Brahmasmi. We identify that we are a pure spirit soul, Sachidananda, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss, like that. And since we are part and parcel of Krishna, then we are meant to please Krishna, serve Krishna, associate with him, like that. Like how our hand is the part of our body, so and meant to serve the body. So by serving the hand, by serving the body, the hand also gets nourished. So that's how even we become happy. So by serving Krishna. So that's called real ego. But when we misuse that our free will, and then we wanted to enjoy independent of Krishna, then our the pure ego, the real ego, is contaminated. So then it becomes false ego. Once the false ego started, then we identify ourselves with the material things, like material body, instead of a pure spirit soul. And this false ego, the predominating deity is Sankarshana. who is directly Lord Ananta with thousands of angels. Even in the upcoming cantos, I think Canto 5, so when Sukadeva Goswami narrates the glories of Lord Ananta, so he also mentions there, like, Lord Ananta is the predominating deity of the material mode of ignorance, as well as the false ego of all conditioned souls. Like when a conditioned soul, when they think that I am the enjoyer and this world is meant for my enjoyment, and this conception of life is dictated by Sankarshan. So, so anyone who wants to be released from this false ego, they should surrender to Sankarsana or Supreme Lord Krishna, because Krishna is the source of Sankarsana. And then in the Sloka 26, we see that the characteristics of the false ego is as a doer, instrument, and an effect. And further characterized as serene. Serene means calm, active, or dull, based on how the false ego is influenced by the three modes: mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. So you see in the sloka, the false ego combination of the three modes is actually a real doer of the any activity that we perform in this material world. So not actually done by all by ourselves. That's why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasa. Ahankara vimudatma kartahamiti manyat. So actually it is done by the false ego through the three modes of material nature. But we think that, we are the real doer. So actually it is carried out by the three gunas. And Prabhupada also mentions that in the purport, this false ego, when it is transformed into the demigods, they become the controlling directors of this material affairs. And as an instrument, this false ego is represented by different senses and sense organs like that. So because of the combination of the demigods and the senses, the material objects are produced. So Prabhupada says that anything that we invent in this material world, the material objects, for our own enjoyment, sense gratification, is the manifestation of this false ego. So that's why Prabhupada stresses that so one should avoid increasing the artificial necessities for our own material enjoyment, so that we can come out of from this false ego. So that's why it is recommended simple living and high thinking. But as the world is progressing towards modernization, so we are simply living and no thinking. And here, based on the false ego, influenced on what mode? So it is characterized either calm or active or dull. So if it is influenced by the mode of goodness, then it is Shanta, calm. But if it is influenced by the mode of passion, then it is active, Ghora. So if it is influenced by the mode of ignorance, then it is dull, Imudhatvama, like that. And from in the text 27, we see that from the false ego of goodness, so another transformation takes place. So what is the transformation? It is the mind. So what is the mind characteristics? The thoughts and reflections give rise to desire. So and Prabhupada mentions in the purport that the symptoms of the mind is to accept or reject. It's based on many desires that we have. So we accept which is favorable to our sense gratification when one is attached with bodily concept, and we reject which is not favorable to our sense gratification. So the mind is not fixed. So it goes here and there. So that's why in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says that chanchalam, it is restless. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna. Not only chanchalam, it is pramata bhalavad. So it's very strong. So, and he says that, instead of controlling the mind, it's easy for him to controlling the heavy wind. So such a great personality, Arjuna, also admitting that it is very difficult to control the mind. But some or other, if we can engage our mind in the process of Krishna consciousness, Savai Mana Krishna Padaravindo, so then it will become fixed, then it becomes calm. That's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Even though Arjuna says that it's very difficult, he says that yes, that is correct, but it can be controlled with practice and renunciation, abhyasena, vairagyana. So if we can practice sincerely our sadhana, this spiritual sadhana, Krishna consciousness, and also at the same time develop detachment from our material objects for our sense gratification. So then we will be slowly be able to control the mind. So, or we can divert our material objects in the service of Krishna, Yukta Vairagya. So that way we can be able to control the mind. So in the text 28, Kapila Bhagavan is mentioning that the mind of the living entity is known by the name of Lord Aniruddha. See, the supreme ruler of the senses, and how he looks is a bluish black form, resembling a lotus flower. And that's where the yogis focus. Prabhupada mentions in the purport is the Lord of the mind is Aniruddha. And the process of yoga, the actual process is the prescribed here, they should meditate on the bluish black form of Aniruddha. So in that way, so they can be able to come out from the agitation of the mind's acceptance and rejection. So then slowly they can gradually become God's realized. So when we control the mind through the process of meditation, so then they will be able to fix up the mind. So of course, for the process of the process for the Kali Yuga is to chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and be happy. And then the text 29, we see that the false ego, when it is influenced by the passion, so the intelligence comes, the intelligence appears. And what are the functions of the intelligence? To help in ascertaining the nature of objects when they come into view, and to help the senses. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that so this intelligence has the discriminating power to understand an object. So, and it helps the senses to make choices. So that's why the intelligence is higher than the senses. So when we use the intelligence in a proper direction, then our consciousness becomes purified. Of course, the ultimate expansion of consciousness is Krishna consciousness. And the further characteristics of the intelligence is so doubt, misapprehensions, correct apprehension, memory, and sleep. So these are the distinct characteristics of the intelligence. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that the doubt called samsaya, so is one of the important function of the intelligence. That's why blind acceptance is not recommended. So even for a spiritual process also, one should inquire. So whatever the questions the one has, so they should be posed to the devotees who are connected to the bona fide sampradaya, and try to get all the answers. That's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, pariprasnyan. So one should inquire. But once one is satisfied with the answers that are coming from the bona fide devotee who is connected to the bona fide sampradaya, so then they should take up that intelligence and mold all our activities based on that intelligence. So that is the proper use of intelligence. So we see that many devotees in the beginning, Prabhupada's disciples, they have so many questions. They asked Prabhupada so many questions, and Prabhupada also encouraged actually to ask many questions. So that way, when the devotees' questions are clarified, or so they understand the actual knowledge, then they fixed up and they molded their activities based on that knowledge, and now they are helping for us to progress in the path of Krishna consciousness. But if one continues to doubting, like the authority after receiving the knowledge, then it will not help them. Like it will cause only destruction. And then misapprehension is called viparyasa. So this intelligence, when it detects his false identification, like when with the help of the intelligence, when one understands that we are not this body, that state called is viparyasa. And what is the nichaya, the correct apprehensions? This is identifying the false identification, detecting the false identification. But what is the right understanding? So that is called nichaya, or correct apprehension, the real understanding. So when one understands that we are a pure spiritual part and parcel of Krishna, we are meant to associate with Krishna, or serve Krishna, or please Krishna, that way we can also become happy. That's our real understanding. And then there is a smriti, memory. So of course, based on our previous memories. Sometimes it helps to take decisions when the similar situation occurs in our life. And then there is a sleep. So even the sleep is also required for the intelligence to work. If there is no sleep, then our brain doesn't work properly. So that's why Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, the yogi should regulate their eating, sleeping, and all the necessities of body in the proper proportions, so they can become successful in the yoga practice. So, and in the text 31, the egoism in the false ego in the mode of passion, it produces two kinds of senses. One type is Jnanendriyas, the senses for acquiring the knowledge. So, which are the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. And based through that senses, we acquire the knowledge, like, hearing, or touching, or seeing, or tasting, or smelling, like that. And there is karmendriyas, the senses of actions. So these karmendriyas are like our hands, legs, anus, genitals, voice, like those things. They are the ones that works. So because the karmendriyas, they work hard, so they depend on the vital energy. It requires some energy to work. And the jnanendriyas, because they acquire the knowledge, so it depends on the intelligence, buddhi. So based on the intelligence, we acquire the knowledge. So, and Prabhupada mentions that in the mood of passion, so when one's false ego is in mood of passion, then the lust will increase. Kamesha, Krodesha, Rajoguna Samudbhava. Like, when the one is situated in passion, then their lust, kama, or krodha, so those will be increased. So that's why we should be very careful not to be in the mode of passion. Slowly, we be situated in the mode of goodness, or the Nistraigunya Bhavachana, or above the three modes, situate in the transcendental, like connect all our activities to Krishna, or center all our activities with Krishna. So that way we can be escaped from the urges of the senses, because these senses are very strong. Balavan Indriyo Gramo, they're very strong. So not just for ordinary personality. So it is mentioned Vidvamsam api karshati. Even for the learned personality, so they will also be sometimes carried away by these Indriyas agitation. So if we remember, like, in the beginning, Devahuti approached Kapila Bhagavan, she posed this question, saying that, due to my senses agitation, I'm going through disturbance. So to help me out the real understanding. So that's how this conversation started. So because these senses are very strong. Of course, Devahuti is a pure devotee. So she is actually representing all of us, like a person like me, like that. So, and then in the text 32, we see that when the egoism in ignorance is agitated by the sex energy of the Supreme Lord, so the subtle element, sound, is manifested. This is how the element started appearing. And from the sound came the sky. So one of the gross element, ether or sky, and the sense of hearing. So these things are appearing. And Prabhupada mentions that all objects of our sense gratification, they are the products of the false ego influenced by ignorance, mode of ignorance. The first sense that produced is the sound. It's a subtle form, the sound. And from the sound came the ether. So the ether came. And from ether, the sense of hearing started. So the entire material entanglement or manifestation, so began from the sound. So that's why we use this sound. This sound can have the power to come out from the material entanglement also. This sound has embedded with powerful potency. So what is that particular potency that will help this sound? This sound will help to come out from this material entanglement is having that sound touched by the transcendental process, like hearing the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So when we hear that, then this will help us to come out from the material entanglement. So this is the cause of the material manifestation, and if we utilize this sound in a proper way, then it will help us also to come out from the material entanglement. So the sound. So instead of listening some material topics, so if we hear Hare Krishna Maha Mantra or Krishna Katha, so then this sound will help us to to go back home, back to God. So like we see that in the Bhagavatam. So Maharaj Parikshit is just simply by hearing Krishna Katha, so he perfected his life. He went back home, back to God. So that's the power of the sound, the transcendental sound. And then we hear the other products of the sound. So which came like it came from the sound, it came the sky. This is the gross element, and then sense of hearing, like that. And then text 33, we see that persons who learned and who have true knowledge, they define the sound as that which conveys the idea of an object. And also this indicates the presence of a speaker. So, and it constitutes the subtle form of ether. The sound is the subtle form of ether. So that's why in the sky, sometimes we hear the sound. The sounds comes. But the characteristics is define that sound that conveys the idea of an object. So when we are when we say that hearing, then there must be a speaker. So without the speaker, there is no question of hearing. So even this whole Vedic literatures, they are mentioned as Shruti. Shruti means the knowledge that is received through hearing. So the hearing. So we have 3 ways of acquiring the knowledge, right? Shabda Pramana, Pratyaksha Pramana, Anumana Pramana. And out of that, this Shabda Pramana. So the Shruti. So that is the perfect process, because these Shrutis, these Vedic literatures are coming from the Supreme Lord. That's why they are Apavarusha. They are coming from the Supreme Lord. So not from any conditions living entity of this material world, because the condition living entity in this material world, so he is not perfect. He has the 4 defects that is mentioned, like he is in illusion, he commits mistakes, he has a cheating propensity, and his senses are imperfect. So that's why the knowledge that comes from them is not perfect. So, but the knowledge that comes from the Supreme Lord through the parampara, the bona fide sampradaya, so that is perfect. So when we take that knowledge and apply that knowledge in our life, then we become perfect. So that's why, and Prabhupada says that when we speak of the seeing, then the form of the ether must be there, the form. And sky is the beginning of the form. And from the sky, other forms emanates. So in the text 34, the activities and characteristics of the ether element, sky, can be observed as the accommodation of room for the external and internal existence of all living beings, namely the field of activities of the vital air, the senses, and the mind. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that so Kardama Muni here is speaking about the ether, Nabashaha. So it is observed as the accommodation of room, like means space. So the external and internal. So they are existed in the vital air, like the veins within the body and the circulation of the vital air. So that all are perceived through the that's the characteristics of the sky. So that's basically it is everywhere. And the field of the activities of the ether is the vital air, the senses, and the mind. So, and these forms, they also have the forms, but they are not visible to our material eyes. So that's why all the forms rest in the sky. And not only that, the mental activities of our thinking, feeling, and willing, they are also in the platform of the ethereal existence. And the perfect usage of that thinking and feeling and willing is, so when we think about Krishna and if we continue that thinking up to the time of death, then we go back to God. So then we don't get any gross body. Otherwise, if we are thinking something else, then we get the gross body. So based on our thinking, the mental existence, that transforms into the gross form. So as soon as there is an opportunity that arises, so the gross forms will appear. And then the text 35, we see that from the ethereal existence, which came from the sound. So this ether came from the sound. So the next transformer, in due course of time, the subtle element touch came, and then the air and the sense of touch. So these 3 became manifested. So we hear that, from the first, started with the sound, which is subtle. From there, the gross element came, sky, and from the sky came the subtle element called touch, and from the touch, the air came, and from the air, the sense of touch also became prominent. So this is what the gradual evaluation. So one after the objects, sense objects, the objects or the gross or subtle forms, they are coming up. And Kardamamuni, Kapil Bhagavan mentions in the text 36, which is the last one for today. So how the characteristics of this element touch is softness and hardness, or cold and heat. So there are the distinct attributes of touch. So which is characterized as the subtle form of air. So now the sky has only the subtle element of sound, but the air, not only the subtle form of sound is included, but also it has the subtle form of touch. Those both are exist in the element air. So, and how the air can be perceived, either it is softness, so the objects they can be perceived in these two ways, like either softness or hardness, or cold and heat. So the touch is the subtle form of the air. So that's why sometimes when the air touches us, then we experience that touch. And similarly, when there is a heavy wind, then we can also hear the sound of the air. So these two are the subtle elements that exist in the air. But the previous gross element, sky, only has the sound. So, but basically, the reason Kapila Bhagavan is going through all these things is with the higher intelligence that is given in the human form, the human life, it should be utilized either these gross or subtle elements in the service of Krishna. So that way we can make our human life perfect. So that's best utilization of all these gross or subtle elements. So in the next session, we will continue to hear the other gross or subtle elements that are appeared from the air. So I'll pause it here for today. Grandhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Krishna and Prabhuji, for a wonderful class. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very
Hare
much, Prabhu.
Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.